All right, welcome back to Business Today and right into the conversation today where we are talking about renewable energy. And I'm joined by Andrew Lomosi, who is the Managing Director, Chevron Africa Limited. Thank you for joining us on Business Today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now let's get into the conversation and look at renewable energy. Kenya is looking at transitioning to 100% clean energy by 2030. First of all, how easy is it to transition 100%?
I think as a country, I don't think we're doing fairly bad in terms of our energy sources. The current installed capacity is about 3,074 megawatts, of which about 81% of that, about 80% is renewable.
So we are remaining with like 20%.
20% is thermal. But when you look at the actual energy generated, whatever we consume, we are consuming about 86%. So the 20% or 21% thermal installed capacity is only contributing to about 14% of the actual energy that is generated.
All right.
So we are not really
doing that bad.
Doing bad, yeah.
All right, and now the energy sources that we have as a country, how much are we tapping into them? And are some of the energy sources that we have not tapped into?
Yeah, I think the energy sources are fairly well distributed. We have geothermal sources which are accounting for about 30% of the grid. Hydro same, about another 30%. Wind is about 15%, give or take. And we have about 5% of solar. And we still have a lot of other projects that are still under development in the pipeline. So I can say, you know, I don't think we are leaving out
any of them.
Yeah.
All right.
And from, you know, my analysis, most of these thermal power plants, are towards the end of the PPA periods. So I think the next 10 or so years, most of them will have been decommissioned. So the strategy here is to probably increase, you know, increase more efforts, you know, in geothermal, especially geothermal and hydro, because we use that for our base load. Base load means, you know, when whatever you're generating, you're consuming, when you don't have the peak hours of consumption, which are normally in the evenings. And that's how the thermal sources normally come in. So when you have a certain installed capacity, and then in the evening, you go home, everyone is cooking, everyone is lighting, so the demand suddenly shoots up. And to take care of that gap, sometimes that's how the thermal sources come in. But if we put more investment, especially in geothermal and hydro as base load, because solar cannot supply you at night, and wind is also intermittent, then we should be able to, you know, cover, sort out this issue of thermal power.
All right. You've actually explained it very well. So therefore, now moving forward, even as we look at in the coming months, and because we are nearing to 2030, how do we as a country just make sure that at least by the time that time reaches, at least we are closer to the vision of 100% clean energy?
I mean, there are a number of things that we need to look at, considering the fact that, you know, it is not the business of government to be in business. So all this new investment in renewable energy is being done by mostly international investors. So first of all, what the government should do is to create an enabling environment. If you look at Kenya, the last 3 years or so, nothing much has happened in renewable energy investment. First, there was a bit of COVID, so nothing much was happening. And then after COVID, there was this task force that was formed to look at strategies of bringing the cost of power down.
Yes.
After the task force, they recommended renegotiations with the current PPA holders, people who are already supplying, and sort of putting up a moratorium on the sector until all this is sorted out. So investors don't like that sort of thing, uncertainty, But I'm glad, I think the moratorium was lifted sometime early last month, and that now has brought up a bit of confidence in the sector, and that should be sustainable in the long run. Another thing in terms of enabling environment, if you're developing a power project, for example, a hydropower project, by the time you start and finish, besides taking care of the land and doing all the technical stuff, you need around 13 different licenses or permits from different government entities. And, both me and you, we know, how sometimes difficult it is dealing with the different government agencies, in order to get a license here or a permit here. So we need to come up with a policy or a way of streamlining this to make it easier. In other countries, end-to-end developing a power project, it takes even a year or less because the money is there. But now dealing up with these other issues is the problem. But in Kenya, it can take even 7 years developing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. And also, you've touched on power.
Yes.
And the cost of power, of course, for the better part of last year and earlier on this year, the prices have skyrocketed, and the president also speaking about we are going to be reducing the amount of the power that Kenyans, the amount of money Kenyans pay towards just to make sure that they use power. So therefore, how is this affecting the journey towards clean energy?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much that affects in terms of renewable energy. But the one thing that stands out, because when you look at your power bill, you have the fixed charges, and then you have all these pass-through costs. You have the fuel cost, fuel energy cost, you have the foreign exchange cost, and I think those two, in terms of the pass-through costs, VAT and the rest, those two take up almost 75% of the bill in terms of the pass-through costs. So when you talk about fuel energy charge, what are you talking about? You're talking about thermal power plants.
Yes.
Because they use diesel or heavy fuel oil. And we have to import that into the country, and we have to buy that using the dollar. So if we phase out the thermal energy source, we have partly resolved the issue of the power bill. And going forward, I mean, most IPPs, all the PPAs are denominated in hard currency, either the dollar or the euro. So going forward in markets that have really come up, like South Africa, they got to a point where local financials were involved, such that these deals were being done in local currency. So that in our case in Kenya, going forward, we would be having a geothermal power plant being set up or a wind power plant being set up, but the financing being done in Kenya shilling. That's also another way of mitigating the issue of the dollar.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. We have to wind up there. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Today. That's it from us. My name is Calvin Yakundi. Remember, Mbiu KTN coming up next. Don't go too far.